Discussion. We'll be giving some brief comments about Futuwwah in regards to instilling chivalry into our children. Both of us will be giving our side of the presentation and then engage you all in conversation with Ta'ala. My comments will be primarily based upon a book that I wrote that came out close to a year ago. It's called Futuwwah and Raising Males in the Sacred Manhood. And that book can be found at 3 different vendors downstairs in the bazaar. Now, when we talk about raising our children in chivalry or Futuwwah, this term and this concept is something that is in our tradition, was always practiced, and was institutionalized, just like our madahib were institutionalized. Futuwwah guilds were institutionalized in Islamic history, going back, we can say, about 8 centuries ago, but it is a concept that goes back to as-Salaf as-Salih. And Futuwwah which is loosely translated as chivalry, spiritual chivalry, sacred chivalry, is somewhat of an elusive term. Some of the definers of this term say it means as-sakhawa wa karam. It means generosity. And not just generosity with money, but when chivalrous Muslims are generous with their time, their wealth, and themselves. Generosity at its peak, or al-karam, is generosity with one's time, one's wealth, and one's self. First, others will say that that Futuwwah, or this chivalry, means the inclination, which is embodied through action, of preferring others over oneself. Preferring others over oneself. And the indication of this is that this Futuwwah, the one who mastered it, was Sayyidul Awwalin wa Akhirin Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. But we have the hadith that says that on the day of resurrection, the people will be saying, Nafsi, Nafsi, myself, myself. There's only one person on that day that will prefer others over himself, who won't be saying Nafsi, Nafsi. Yaqul Nabiyullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, Ummati, Ummati. My ummah, not myself, myself. And this is a special maqam for Habibullah Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Ummati, Ummati. Futuwwah, in this concept of chivalry, has certain khisal, certain inward characteristics that manifest themselves outwardly. And for males, these traits outwardly and socially exhibit themselves in different ways than from females. And we have to say this because we are in a time of confusion where we are taught that genders, males and females, are supposed to do everything for true equality exactly the same way. That's not the Islamic conception. وَلَيْسَ ذَكَرُ كَالْأُنثَى. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran very clearly, as it relates to Sayyidatuna Maryam, Wadlaw anha, and her birth. The male is not like the female. Ya ayyuhan nas inna khalaqnakum min dhakarin wa untha. O humankind, surely we created or constructed you from a single male and a single female, meaning that gender is a divine construct, not a man-made construct. And it's physiological, but it is also related to inward leanings and inclinations inside of us that suit our outward forms. In other words, Al-Habib al-Mustafa sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said in a hadith Hasan, Rawahu at-Tabarani rahmullah ta'ala, Inna li kulli shay'in haqiqa. For every created thing, there's a deeper reality. So, for being a chivalrous, upright young lady, she is such due to the metaphysical reality of her femininity inside. Not just outwardly looking like a woman or dressing the part, it is inward inclinations. Likewise, the reality of being a man is not just in having a deep voice, working out, accumulating money, and having a deep voice, such as some of the people in the so-called red pill movement would like to distill manhood down just to materialism and outward manifestations. It first starts inwardly to manifest outwardly. What's real is not readily seen. And see, we believe in the ghaib, right? You can't be a real Muslim without believing in the unseen. Like right now, I believe without a shadow of a doubt that there are more malaika in this room than there are people. I have absolutely no doubt about that. There are more angels in this room right now than us. This is a metaphysical reality. It's a spiritual reality, not a material reality. So in this bringing of manhood and womanhood into girls and boys, there are certain types of what we could say raising up methodically in tarbiyah that has to be given to the genders. And it is first through modeling of behavior. We are taught by our teachers, those of us who have studied this tradition, that we learn al-adab before al-ilm. Adab before ilm. Adab is loosely translated as etiquettes or manners. That doesn't give the term justice. Adab means to give everyone and everything their proper due at the proper place and time. Adab is a type of social emotional intelligence that you give everyone and everything their proper due at the proper place and time. The Prophet ﷺ even told us how to have adab with horses and camels, isn't that right? Adab with one's parents, adab with the mashayikh, adab with siblings, adab with Muslims, adab with non-Muslims. So this is first modeled through embodiment. And as the saying goes, it takes a village to raise a child. Isn't that right? And this is one of the things that we have to understand and get back to as a community. We have drank a lot of Western Kool-Aid. Why do I say that? The West told the lie in American sociologists about the so-called nuclear family. The Islamic paradigm is the extended family. You have your extended family that's close together, and you have familial relations and people in your vicinity that take the care of the rearing and embodying certain behaviors and social mores and expectations and raising the children in the village and in one's family, how to be upright women and upright men. The nuclear family says you have your one husband, your one wife, and your children all off to yourself. And now that's even eroding because now the American society, na'udhu billahi min dhalik, the American society is quickly approaching the majority of children being born from zina. And no society will be able to sustain itself without imploding if its children are born out of wedlock, outside the family unit. No society will be able to sustain itself, much less thrive, under such conditions. So it's the extended family that helps raise these expectations. Then the young males and young females are deliberately put in the care of others outside of the family. So normally, on the Islamic calendar, when children are below the age of 7, we let them be a little more free to play. Once they get to the age of 7, they're supposed to be given some more structure. Right? They're supposed to be given some more structure. Like you start teaching your children how to make salah for real. This is my African American English, sorry. For real, you should not go. Once they're at age of 7, you should start teaching them the fiqh of wudu, right? Or tahara, how you break your tahara, how to make your prayers, etc. How many rak'ah or salat al-sunnah, qabla salat al-dhuhr, and etc., etc., etc. Then at an age when they get to be older, they then are also supposed to be taught their far'ain, their individual religious obligations as they get older. So a 7-year-old, let's say, doesn't have the cognitive ability to understand high philosophical issues or issues of aqidah. Once they get to be older, coming to the age of being mukallaf, which is normally the age of 14 or 15 for the males, it's younger for females because women emotionally mature quicker than males, parents. Not only that, even there are studies that says that the female brain in the frontal lobe develops and matures quicker than our males. So this is part of the problem. Sometimes we have education and we see our young males lagging behind at certain grades in education. They really shouldn't be in the same class with the girls. And it's not because of gender separation. It's that the women in many ways are more advanced intellectually at certain ages than the males. We have to accept that, brothers. For our sons. This is reality. And this is why many times young sisters, when they're at the age of marriage, don't want to marry a young man the same age as them. Why? Because they're not as mature as them. They're not. Normally, a young lady who's 21 years old, her intellectual match is probably someone 26 or 27. Adi, like normally, right? Now, before I continue, I talk about the systematizing of the Futuwwah. And then I'm going to get to a couple of qualities. Inshallah, Sheikh Abdullah will join us, so I'm not up here talking the entire time. And this is an important lesson in general for us as Muslims about how, through Allah's permission, we bring back the izzah to this ummah. During the time of the Abbasiyin, Palestine was occupied by the Crusaders, Al-Quds, Jerusalem. Like right now, Jerusalem is occupied. It's not the first time it's been occupied. It was occupied before by the Crusaders. There's a lesson in this right here about how we get Palestine back. There's not a pure political solution to get Palestine back. I hate to tell you. It's something beyond just politics of getting Palestine back. What happened was there was a view where one of the Abbasi leaders, he gave himself the title An-Nasir ad-Din Allah. Literally means the one who is the helper of Allah's deen. He systematized what's called the Futuwwah guilds for the brothers. So there was on the one end, the young males were put under the care of elders, teachers, mentors, in which first they were taught proper adab, comportment, and etiquettes. Secondly, taught sacred knowledge. First, the ma'rifah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's where the affair starts. Right? Then learning the basic daily fiqh. Then the third item was Sacred athletics. I'm using this term, sacred athletics. Is that the term that's used in the book? But translation, sacred athletics. Young males who are developing and have this energy and testosterone need to get this out in healthy ways and have it disciplined through sacred athletics. What was taught to these fityan? Number one, grappling, or we can say martial arts. Jalaluddin Suyuti, rahmatullahi alayhi, wrote an entire book on prophetic grappling. It's even been translated by Ustad Nisar Sheikh in the UK. It's Suyuti's book on prophetic grappling. About the wrestling of the Prophet ﷺ and the Sahaba, Ridwanullahi ta'ala alayhim ajma'in. Number two, archery. We have Athar that says that the Sahaba were encouraged to what? Do archery. Martial arts and archery help teach discipline, help teach precision, and in the case of martial arts and wrestling, help teach humility. I think all of us need to be flipping our backs every once in a while, brothers, to deal with our ego. Assalamu alaikum, Shaykh. Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah, our Sheikh is here, so I'm going to sit down shortly. Equestrianism, horseback riding. These were part of activities within the Futuwwah Guild. And of course, there is always a teacher or a master in regards to the teachings of these issues. And you might think, well, what is the benefit of teaching archery or martial arts or these things? Or horseback riding? This goes back to the metaphysical reality. Anything that the Prophet ﷺ encouraged the Sahaba to do, know there's barakah in it. There's a sir, there's a secret in it, whether we understand it intellectually or not. We don't have to understand everything on the surface all the time, my brothers and sisters. This is my point. I'm not saying blind following, but there are spiritual asrar. There are spiritual dimensions of things that sometimes we can't empirically quantify early on. Understand? This was the other point of the Futuwwah Guilds. Also in the Futuwwah Guilds, there was al-khidmatul al-jaliyah, or al-khidmatul al-ummah. There is a community service that's organized, and you put the young people in some sort of organized community service. Because in order to be a chivalrous Muslim has to be trained up to learn how to be selfless instead of selfish. Selfless instead of selfish. Little babies are selfish, right? Because they have not emotionally matured. Muslim men, Muslim women are never supposed to be selfish. Should be selfless. And then the fourth, for the males, at that time there were skilled crafts that were taught, or skilled artisanship. Young males were trained on how to make swords, how to make horseshoes, and other things that we may now call today industrial education. As the late Booker T. Washington discussed it, who started Tuskegee University. Industrial education. That yes, the youth were taught how to read and write. Yeah, they were taught reading, writing, and these things. They also were taught how to do something with their hands to benefit the ummah, and also for the brothers to be able to have a profession or to be able to make some money to be able to support having a wife. After one generation of these Futuwwah guilds being established, in the lifetime of Ibn Jawzi al-Hanbali rahmatullahi alayhi, and Sheikh Abdul Qadir al-Jilani al-Hanbali rahmatullahi alayhi, and then Ibn Qudama al-Maqdisi al-Hanbali rahmatullahi alayhi, and then Abu Hamid al-Ghazali al-Shafi'i rahmatullahi alayhi, a generation later, these were the young men that were in Jaysh Salahuddin that took back al-Quds. In one generation, But it was understood that, again, in getting the affairs of the Muslims correct, it wasn't necessarily about the outside. It was getting the insides right, the inward selves. So this is part of our thing. Now, in conclusion, we'll go from the beginning to the end of two important principles. The first is, in our families and in our dealings with our young people, we have to model as-sidq. We have to model truthfulness. And for us, this starts truthfulness in our intentions, sidq al-niyyah. We have to be truthful, right? In children, we are truthful in our intentions for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Children watch our every single move. They'll see if we are consistent in what we stand for and what we're doing, or if we have a face over here and a behavior here and a different behavior over here. We have a public behavior, public piety, and private impropriety, if I can use that word. إِنَّ شَرَّ النَّاسِ ذَا الْوَجْهَيْنِ مِنْ إِخْوَانِ النَّبِيِّ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَآلِهِ وَسَلَّمَ. And the most evil of the people has two faces. They have a face over here and a face over there. We have to be sincere in our intentions. This simple call, truthful in our speech with people in front of our children and with our children. ثُمَّ صِدْقُ الْأَعْمَالِ, truthfulness in our actions. When we have an amana or a promise, we keep it. Start with our time. None of this colored people time, African time, out of time, daisy time. When we say we're going to start a program, like a wedding, or a Sira program, if we're the ones who are the conveners of that, we should start when we say, not with the intention of we're going to start in half an hour or 3 hours later. Our children pick up on this, by the way. It becomes a social expectation. We are on time with our jobs, and we're late with each other, which really shows where our hearts really reside. It's really the hope of dunya. We're on time for our jobs at such and such corporation, or we work at such and such hospital. And then we abuse each other's time. Consistency. And this is the beginning of the fair, based upon the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, and hadith sahih. عليكم بالصدق إن الصدق يهدي إلى البر وإن البر يهدي إلى الجنة. You are obligated to be truthful. Why? Because truthfulness guides to al-bir. Al-bir is what's called a kalima jamia. It has deep meaning. Basically, sidq guides to other noble traits of character. And those noble traits of character guide us or lead us to paradise. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us of Ahlul Jannah. The third of those is, and then the last point I will get to is al-ithar. And this is the preference of preferring others over oneself. That is not just something that is said, but it's something that to be modeled. And we ourselves, we all need to sit with teachers, and we all need remedial work ourselves. Firstly, with our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala individually, before trying to model this for our children. If we establish this relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it will naturally and organically come up through us. Right? I'm running out of time, but I will give you a quick story. It's narrated by Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyah in the book called Madarij al-Salikin. Our Ustad Waymir Anjum, who's speaking here, he translated this book. In the chapter of chivalry of Futuwwah, he tells the story of Imam Jafar al-Sadiq radhiyallahu. And he had a disciple by the name Shaqiq al-Balkhi. The teacher asked the student, "What is chivalry?" The student said, "Shaqiq." He said, "When I am given, I show shukr, I show gratitude. But when I am denied, when I'm not given, I show sabr. Imam Walid said, even the dogs of Medina do that. Yes, we're supposed to show shukr when we're given. Yes, we're supposed to be patient. But what he's saying is that Futuwwah is a maqam above that. It's above it. To be chivalrous is above that. He said, Ya ibn Rasulillah, O son of the messenger of God, what is Futuwwah with you? Meaning the Prophet's family. He said, Radiallahu anhu, when we are given, we give it all away. We prefer others over ourselves. Ithar. And he says, and when we are denied, we show gratitude. That's Futuwwah. That's Futuwwah. And we ask Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us be the people of chivalry. And we ask Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us be like that prophetic community that instills that in the children, as the Sahaba instilled this into the Tabi'een. What for me?